In our modern world, it is very, very common for everybody to be against racism, right? And that's such a wonderful thing. But unfortunately, there's one type of racism that just continues and no one tries to put a stop to it because everyone argues that it's not actually real. And that is racism against white people. Some people may say that you can't do that. You can't be racist towards white people. But maybe this is just a crazy opinion on my behalf. But I feel judging anyone on the color of their skin is just horrible and you should never do it, including white people. And one of the breeding grounds for this type of absolute shit and this terrible way to live your life is TikTok. And that's what we're going to venture into today, ladies and gentlemen. So strap yourself in. It's time to realize why you're a bad person if you have white skin.
Do you think all white people are inherently racist?
Yes.
That's harsh.
I do not.
Thank you.
One's born racist, but I do think that you have biases that you have to consciously work to unlearn because you're white in America.
So you're at fault just because of the color of your skin?
Depends on how you were raised and if white people are, if you're not ignorant to the privilege that you have as a white person.
We all have privilege. Everyone has privilege. If you're not sick, you're privileged. If you're not depressed, you're privileged. If you're white, maybe you're privileged over some people, but not everyone.
I'm not going to blame every white person or assume that, they're all racist.
Good. That's a fucking spot on attitude because a lot of white people are racist, but a lot of white people are not racist. A lot of black people are racist. A lot of black people are not racist, etc., etc. It's just case by case.
Most white people enable racism, even if they're not blatantly racist towards minorities.
So just by existing, you're racist. That's fucking ridiculous, but whatever. That's just, that is the overarching opinion of a lot of people on social media, that you are racist no matter what if you happen to have white skin.
So like in Australia, the white parliament is trying really hard to ban vapes. The main reason the government wants to ban vapes is...
Okay, so people smoking vapes. Okay, so the white government wants to ban vapes.
Because they can't apply a tax on vapes.
Why can't you tax vapes? Don't know the answer to that, but okay.
In the same way that they have taxes on tobacco. And they keep trying to advertise it as like a kind of, we're trying to like remove toxic chemicals from children. But I'm pretty sure the more honest take on what the government is really doing is quite literally just trying to maintain their power and grip amongst the trades of like goods and services.
What has this got to do with white people? Why is this
that
white
they can
government
profit
doing?
off? And they can't profit off vapes.
Okay.
One sort of like silver lining to this is that Gen Z has been low-key fucked over. And it's like honestly nice to see like a lot of white Gen Z kids talking about racism and acknowledging that white people can't be victims of racism.
They say that because they're terrified of getting in trouble or getting kicked out of their school or they're losing their job or getting cancelled on the internet. I guarantee they don't believe that. Like, they want to talk about racism and they think racism's terrible. But I guarantee that if you ask them, if you allowed them to anonymously tell you, do you think it's okay to be racist against people who have white skin? Most of them, I think, if you could say it anonymously, would say no, just don't be racist to anyone.
Because they know that racism is a systemic outcome of white supremacy ideology.
You can say anything and nod. It doesn't mean you're right.
And that like every single country that is a victim of like white colonization has a white parliament in place. And they pretty much just like perpetuate a lot of propaganda, cultural attitudes, ideas.
What has this got to do with vapes? Okay. And by the way, there's a lot of Aboriginal people in Australia, native Australians, in Parliament. And look, in America, there's plenty of black people in government, politics, Congress. In the UK, it's the same. So how is it a white Parliament here? What does that say to all of the people who happen to be black or Indian or any other colour that happen to be in Parliament?
White people being the kind of norm, and that every other colour...
Well, white people are the norm in a lot of countries because they're the majority. Not in Middle Eastern countries or African countries or Asian countries, but in 3 countries that we're talking about, I guess, then they are the norm because that's where most white people come from. And in Australia, obviously, it's a different sort of thing. A lot of white people got sent out here.
It's such a fucking like stab and twist of the knife when white people do this. It's like, are you not aware of your own fucking cultural lineage, the history of white people, colonization?
Yeah, colonization was horrible, but there's also a lot of lineage in every single ethnicity group that is horrible. I mean, you can't blame people for shit that they didn't do. Native Australians, Aboriginal Australians, were treated like absolute shit for a long, long time, and that's not okay. It's not okay at all. But can you blame me for that? No. Or my offspring, or my parents? No. or the people around us? No. You can blame certain people, and maybe your hatred is to the government of the day. Fair enough. But blaming all white people? It's a racist attitude. Because if the roles were reversed and I blamed all black people for something, I'd be a piece of shit. Right?
But then white people like to shoot us down and label us as like people suffering from like victim complexes.
That video goes on for another like 45 seconds, and not once does she answer the questions why banning vapes was racist. I feel like you should answer that question. Okay, what's happening here? This is from Libs of TikTok. Unhinged anti-white racist screams at people inside a Dallas, Texas restaurant, calling them white privileged motherfuckers who never worked for a goddamn thing. Okay. Oh. What a weird... This is what happens because of things like TikTok. People are brought into this ideology and this religion where they need to, well, they have an enemy. They have the Satan or the devil. In this case, it's white people. And you need to go out there and attack them because they're who's to blame for everything that's wrong in your life. Dude. I think a lot of that is cultural, and I don't mean black people culture, I mean woke culture. That is something that just happens now. You get all these people who are obviously mentally ill going and screaming and yelling, and it happens a lot across a lot of different activists. I think it's just something to do with being an activist, whatever activist you want to be, whether it's a vegan activist or a feminist or a woke activist, whatever. You just love screaming at people and blaming everyone else for all your problems. Here's the fucking hot tip, babe. Not one of those people in those restaurants did anything to you ever. Ever. Okay, so we're in the middle of the video. What do these attitudes and this way of thinking about white people actually do? Well, it changes the corporate landscape. It changes how people get jobs. It changes how people live their lives. Corporate America pledged to hire more people of color, and it did. The year after Black Lives Matter protests, the S&P 100 added more than 300,000 jobs. 94% of them went to people of color. Now, is that a good thing? Maybe for the people of colour, but I tell you who it's not a good thing for, the white people who didn't get the jobs. And you might be thinking, well, white people have had jobs for forever, and well, not these white people. Just hire the best people for the job. If you are a black person, a brown person, a white person, you should get the job if you're the best candidate, not because of the colour of your skin. And I guarantee you this, anyone who has the ability to think logically and critically, no one wants to get picked for something just because of the colour of their skin or their sex or their gender ideologies. All their sexual preferences. You don't want to be picked because of that. That is pity, that is shit, and that is not a good way to live your life.
Comedian Tyler Fisher claims he has been turned down by 3 agencies because they said they just weren't looking for white men.
Do you think it was justified?
Hey, I can relate to that. Back when I first started doing comedy, people were upset because I would put on comedy shows and I'd only have white men in the lineup. And I recently had a mate of mine send me a photo last night, actually, send me a screenshot of a comedy show he was putting on that just happened to have 5 white dudes in it. And this lady was upset about that. Well, here's the thing. A lot of white comedians have white comedian friends, okay? And sometimes the lineups just don't always happen to have one person who's a different color and one different gender. It just doesn't line up like that always. When I was running comedy shows, I would just pick the best people that were available at the time. There was the less amount of work. Sometimes that was all white people. Sometimes that was all men. Sometimes it was a brown person, a black person, a woman, Christ, an older person, a person with a disability. But sometimes that just doesn't happen. Who gives a shit? And the other way to look at that is if you're a white person in comedy, you shouldn't be given opportunities because there's been too many white people in comedy. And that's shit too. Once again, we just want the best people for the job. And that's why you go on Netflix right now and you see so many comedy specials that are just shit and the people are only in that special, usually some sort of different gender to me. They only have that comedy special because they are that different gender. And that's pretty sad.
Justified for me to be told, we can't represent you. You don't have the chance to now compete for jobs because you're white.
How's that fair?
Is it a policy, like, explicit that they're not taking on any, like, white men, or is it, like, case by case?
On-camera talent, stand-up, probably not, no.
That's crazy.
Okay, so no white men are allowed for on-camera stuff.
I guess it's right now where it's.
It's funny because it's not just comedy that this happens. You see it on any streaming platform or movies now. In the car, say there's 5 people. There has to be a woman. There has to be a person of color. There has to be someone with a disability. There has to be like one older person. You have to fill all these quotas. Disney released it not too long ago with their diversity quotas that you had to have this and you had to have this and in this department. Why don't you just pick the best people for the job? The cream will rise to the top. You'll make the best movies, the best TV shows, the best comedy specials if you allow the best people to rise to the top. And if you don't and you just rely on diversity and all this equality of outcome shit, you will continue to see the absolute garbage that is being rehashed and rehashed every single year in the entertainment industry.
About how much space white people take up on a sidewalk.
Somebody should talk about how much space white people take up on the sidewalk. Okay.
I feel like even with the least spatially aware black or brown person, white people possess even less spatial awareness. Anytime there's somebody in my way here in Chicago, it is a white person. And I wonder if this lack of spatial awareness has led to all of the white women who are claiming Chicago's like really unsafe for them. They've had all these scary things happen. Because in my opinion, if you lack spatial awareness, you don't even understand how people are perceiving you.
Okay. So there's a lot of white people, a lot of white women saying that Chicago is not safe anymore. Let's have a look at the Chicago crime statistics. The violent crime rate in Chicago is 5.38% per 1,000 residents, way higher than the national average. Okay, is that because white people aren't moving on the sidewalk? Or is that because there's far too many guns and there's far too many bad people out there? Is that the reason, or is it the sidewalks?
Just to make sure I'm crystal clear when I say this, I am not by any means blaming women for what is happening.
Important, because you can attack white people, but you can attack white women, but not women. Just remember that.
This is, of course, a man's problem, but as women, we have to be spatially aware. We need to know 100% how the people around us are perceiving us at all times if you want to be safe.
I show this in every single video that has something to do with TikTok. This is the problem with social media. We are listening to people who for thousands of years should never have been listened to, and now we're hearing them. And it makes you think, oh my God, the world's insane. The world is insane, no doubt, but not as insane as this person. But the fact that people actually think like this, that's fucked up. And that's what you're seeing in universities and colleges, and these are the young people that are coming through, which should terrify all of us. Now, you may still not believe me that there is a lot of hatred against white people out there. Look no further than one of the leaders of the BLM. Whites are subhuman with genetic defects. Interesting. Whiteness is not humanness. In fact, white skin is subhuman X. Why is there an X in there? All phenotypes exist within the black family, and white people are a genetic defect of blackness, okay? White people have a higher concentration of enzyme inhibitors that suppress melanin production. That is very, very important, by the way. But that's the only difference between white people and black people is melanin. Anyway, melanin is present at the inception of life. Melanin is directly yada, 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 lots of different melanins. And that's what you're saying. Because white people have less melanin, they're subhuman. Cool, mate. So beautiful, loving, and uber progressive.
Why do so many white people get on podcasts, get on TikTok, and talk about how their children don't bathe or how they don't bathe? Okay. I feel like there's something to discuss here about whiteness and how it is viewed as clean and pure and better and primary and default. And really the history goes to show that white people have always been disgusting. Okay. Indigenous people, African people, they were bathing, and they many of them noted that the first sign of Europeans was their stench, that they were just putrid.
What a weird video to make. It's got 65,000 likes too.
And I do think a lot of the reason why people of color in America are so clean, smell so good, have to have their hair done, have to have their makeup done, is because of upward mobility.
So white people are allowed to smell, black people aren't.
White women can just walk into Target with a messy bun and sweatpants, and it's like, oh, look at her, like she could be a multi-millionaire. Her husband could be an entrepreneur. Yet a black woman is not afforded that same luxury.
Is that true? I don't spend that much time at Target.
So I really feel like white women are just rubbing that level of privilege in when they go on podcasts or come on TikTok and talk about how their kids don't bathe. Like,
you should bathe your kids. We probably don't need to bathe as much as we do. A little bit of stank is not too bad. Don't get me wrong, I bathe every day. Well, I have a shower every day, particularly after the gym and stuff. But isn't that what most people do? Although when a baby is born, you're not supposed to bathe them as quickly as they once did. You're supposed to let all the shit they're covered in, let it seep into the skin. It helps with their immunity and all that, and probably moisturizes something else. I don't fucking know. I can't remember. It was a long time ago. But yeah, you're not supposed to bathe children as much, but if they're dirty, you bathe them, right? If you're dirty, you bathe.
That is disgusting. I'm sorry. I grew up taking a bath every single night. My parents
Congratulations.
brushed my hair every single night, brushed my hair every single morning.
What are you talking about?
It wasn't that big of a deal.
I'm just going to leave that one right there. That's the R word. That's what that is.
When people watch The Hate You Give, what do you want them to walk away with?
This is Old Love from the new Star Wars series, Acolyte. Acolyte?
Because I know everyone...
Talking about white people being upset because the Star Wars is just shit.
I know everyone has a slightly different feeling.
Well, I mean, white people crying actually was the goal.
Again, if you changed, obviously it's a joke, but if you changed the colour of skin of people in that joke, you would be in a lot of trouble. And I think that's a problem. I think you should be able to make jokes like that, you should be able to make them in any direction. And the crowd applauds. Very good. Lovely. It's a rough old world out there for us poor whiteys.
White boy says, I had to wait in line at Starbucks today, so I know about oppression. White boy retweets NPR and watches Jeopardy for fun. White boy won't admit it, but he likes it when you get the answer wrong. Likes the feeling of knowing just a little bit more than you do. White boy listens to indie music and paints his life a 500 Days of Summer shade of mope.
Could you imagine being this fucking insane?
White boy is glad Green Book won the Oscar and not glad that Trump is the president. Not glad, but safe. Happy to know he will not have to live in a world where white people are the minority. White boy says, aren't you white? White boy says he knows all about brown people because of all the Spanish girls he's dated. Says real tacos have radishes on them. Says horchata is Mexican.
Jesus fucking Christ. What are you even doing? This is like an open mic night of my worst nightmares.
Titty milk, and I'm like, damn, I wish my titties were full of horchata. Or maybe I don't, because white boy would just set me up at a hipster cold brew coffee shop somewhere and start turning a profit while I bust my horchichis in another episode of cultural appropriation at its finest.
Imagine this pain and anger that are in these people's hearts. Like, this is genuine hatred, is what it is. And if you don't believe that, just change the colour of skin yet again. If you made this about anyone else, you would be shouted down, and rightfully so.
Brown mouth is dirty with every flip of my chingona tongue and every you shout it at the orange TV, pendejo. White boy thinks my brown mouth, my brown friends, my brown life is dirty.
Does he? Maybe one did.
Tell him that I am tied to this land, to my native Aslan tongue and the red dirt in my teeth.
I thought Aslan was isn't that I bet I'm wrong, but in Auslan in Australia is the sign language in this country. So I'm glad to know that you do Auslan in America. That's weird.
My teeth. White boy responds by texting me a picture of a cartoon Pocahontas, naked ass out, standing next to John Smith, who is holding a looped belt, smiling. White boy says, JK, LOL. White boy thinks it'd be kinky if I said, colonize me, daddy.
I like that. I don't like that. That's just, I think that was funny.
White boy tells me this in a Tinder message, tells me he does not believe in privilege, meaning it is not a privilege to love me, not a privilege to hold me or whisper in my ear. White boy just expects these things, just like his ancestors did. White boy says he could beat me at a job interview or a sport or a poetry slam. White boy says he could beat me.
I'm going to prescribe you with Lexapro fucking now. Oh my God. This is shit you tell a therapist, not post on TikTok.
White boy says I don't need your consent, I'm your boyfriend.
Well, that's fucking too.
Doesn't understand the word no since he is the only one who ever gets to say it.
Well, that's fact. That's your poor choice in boyfriend.
An entitlement. His favorite movies are The Social Network and American Psycho. He jokes about luring me in like prey. Tells me about the way bunny rabbits are calm to stillness and forced to trust just before someone slides the skin off their small bodies. He tells me this.
What's wrong with you? What's wrong with this dude?
Playing with my hair. So I am splayed across his chest, wondering why I keep making the same mistakes over and over again. He's so comfortable with the way that history keeps repeating itself, and I just want to kick and push my way out of his palms. I am all bunny rabbit, heartbeat, and sudden will to live. White boy always leaves me hoping that I won't have to run away screaming this time. Leaves me wishing that he was better than all of the men and mistakes before him. White boy says that he is already the best that there ever was.
Fuck off, ladies and gentlemen. That'll do. Be a good motherfucker. Peace in the Middle East. My dick stings. I'm done. Bye.